Hi folks, welcome to Duncan in the Forest. I'm not in the woods today, we are still in lockdown, so I don't need to be there, so I'm at home. But following on from the videos talking about firewood and firewood splitting, I thought I'd show you some of the firewood that I work with. Now, you can do a lot of reading up about different types of firewood. All wood does burn. Some woods burn better, some woods burn faster, some woods burn slower, some produce a better heat. But it does depend on where you are in the country and also what you have access to. So I'm quite lucky, I have access to quite a lot of different types of tree species which I can use for my fire at home, but also for campfires and also for fires within forest school. So I'm just going to show you some of them that I use regularly, but it is also personal preference. As I said, some people have got their favourite types of wood that they burn. So I'm going to concentrate on broadleaf trees, so deciduous trees. I don't really burn a lot of evergreens. I tend to find they're quite spitty, and I don't really have a huge amount of access to them, so I'm going to stick with deciduous trees. So just on the subject of evergreen, I do use pine, so usually in the form of pallets. I'd split this down for kindling. It can be a bit spitty, but it's just to get my fires started. So pine from pallets or leftover bits of softwood is fine. So what I've got in here is I've got a bit of sycamore. I find sycamore burns okay. I have easy access to sycamore because it's a non-native and it can be a bit invasive. It is felled quite often. It's also good for carving as well. I've got a little bit of oak here. Oak is a great wood to burn. I don't really get my hands on oak that often. Oak burns nice and slow and it does produce really good embers. This is one of my personal favourites here, hawthorn, which I find burns really nice, produces some good embers. They last quite a long time and it's just a real warming fire when I use hawthorn. Silver birch here, this is one of the mainstays of my fires just because I got easy access to birch. And birch twigs are also great for starting the fire, and likewise with birch bark. So birch is a real sort of triple threat when it comes to firewood. It burns nice and bright, you get good heat off this, but it doesn't last long. Here I've got a bit of holly. Holly is a really hard wood. It burns nice and slow. I don't have a huge amount of holly, but it does burn well. This is a bit of a mystery wood. Often is the case is I will salvage wood from wherever I can find. I got this a fair few years back, some really big stumps. I think it's holm oak, but I found that it burns really well. I've got cherry here as well. Cherry, apple, all of the fruit woods, pear, they burn really well. They've got a pleasant aroma as well. Good for carving as well. This piece obviously not, because it's got a big knot, but cherry and apple, I often use fruit woods for carving. And then I've got another one here that I don't use that often. This is elm. I've had it burning on the fire at home recently. It's a bit spitty, so I'm still going to utilise it, but I'll probably only use 1 or 2 logs and make sure I'm using the fire screen, but also I can use it outside, not a problem. So when it comes to using the different firewoods, you know, you can mix your firewoods, so you won't find any willow here. I don't use too much willow or alder. If you've got firewoods that are not as strong burners, you can mix them with other nice firewoods that burn more brightly, so you can make the most out of the different types of wood. And a kind of a handy way I see of firewood is if you imagine your canopy trees in a traditional broadleaf woodland, they tend to be things like ash, oak, beech. They all burn really well and they're really great firewoods. They last long and they produce good embers. When you imagine a lot of the understory, so the shrub and the understory species, they will be your kind of secondary fuel, so they burn well but they don't burn as long. Another couple of woods that I use a lot, and I've really focused on providing loads of variety here, but the 2 woods that kind of make up most of my log store are ash and hazel. And hazel burns well, but it is a really useful wood. We try not to burn it a lot of the time because it's really good as a green wood for whittling and for craft. But any leftover wood that goes too dry, it ends up being firewood, and it burns well. Ash, again, is another wood that we harvest quite a lot for forest school, so any green ash that ends up drying too far, or any excess ash, comes home. And ash is renowned as one of the best firewoods. Some people say it's the best. It's definitely up there, because it does burn well, it burns for quite a long time, not as long as oak, and you can burn it green, so if you're outside you can burn it green no problem and still get quite good heat off it. Now, we did mention about making use of what you have access to, so just looking here, we've got an apple tree in the garden. We've given it a prune recently, we've got loads of twigs here. They will need seasoning, but we will make use of these for kindling. One of the great things about working with firewood and getting to know firewood is you know, when you're cutting it, when you're splitting it, when you're collecting it, when you're salvaging it, you really get to know the different types of wood, from the bark, from the wood grain, the colour of the heartwood, just the way the wood behaves. And again, the same when it comes to burning, really trial and error and trying out different woods. You know, don't necessarily take for granted that one particular species is not a very good firewood. Give it a go and see how it performs. Everybody's got their own personal preferences. Everybody's got their favourites. I think for me, again, depending on what I can get hold of, birch is one of my favourites because it burns bright, it burns hot. Ash, again, another favourite of mine. And probably hazel, because again, I've got plenty of it. But I could say cherry as well, because cherry burns great. But it's really personal preference and experience and access, what you can get hold of. I hope this has been useful. So thanks a lot, guys, and see you again, hopefully out in the forest.